Welcome everyone to the Sky Community Call, where we have fun and interesting updates and insights and deep dives occasionally on stuff happening in the community and things that are being worked on. And so today we'll start off with the demand analysis, which is the absolute number one most important thing that every Sky holder should be on top of if they're nerding out about Sky. And then I will go over talking about like the sort of the general high level process of like how stars are created, both in the long run, sort of like conceptually in theory, and then practically what's happening behind the scenes right now with the various stars that are being stood up. And then also I'll talk about the accessibility reward and like get into the details of that and how like sort of how that's an opportunity right now and how actually that can turn into contributors and community members actually building up a business in attracting USDS holders in the near term. Right, over to you, Raju.
Thanks for that. So the idea from me today is to keep it very simple and quick. We've done some deep dives over the past few weeks, but the idea is really maybe spend 5 minutes or so just to highlight the key trends over the last week that we've seen on the demand side. I think you need to click on my icon to see the video and accompany this. So with that, I'll jump straight in. The first feature to call out is Sky token rewards, and we saw last week how that's been building up recent momentum. That's carried on over the last week as well. And it'll be interesting to see actually how that plays out with the recent rate balance that's just happened, but certainly over the last week and carrying on the momentum from this month. Jumping into our core savings feature and looking again just at the last week, we talked about the prior dip in the last session. It appears to be a sea of calm, but if you look under the surface, which is what this graph on the right represents, there are a few trends that are worth highlighting. So the first is with the whales category. So these are those large users who at one stage or the other have held above 20 million. We continue to see the outflows that we've been observing over the month in what is a relatively low SSR environment, and I think to some degree expected from this category of hot money mercenary capital that's very quick to move, always in seek of yield, and tends to move big and quickly. However, these outflows are more than counterbalanced by what I'd call perhaps growth in the protocol to protocol segment. And that's a demand segment that we believe is far more sticky and profitable for the ecosystem. So these are the real builders. And what we're seeing is this growing trend of stablecoin vaults that are tapping the SSR to power their savings. And I'll call a few out. The first from our very first start, which is Spark, and their USDC vault. So the growth trend continues since their recent launch, very much driven by what is a great UX and value prop for USDC holders. Very simple to use and a great experience. We're seeing something similar from other vaults. So one recent one that we found interesting from Turtle Club Protocol, and you can see the traction that they're having. I'm not very familiar with the proposition, but what we wanted to call out is actually just the momentum that these protocol to protocol integrations are starting to drive. And the last one I'll call out, I think, is a very interesting one because it's one from Maple that allows, it's more institutional type money. So it's not that DeFi degen, but this is institutional money. And what Maple have done is they've integrated the SSR to enable their pools to deploy capital into the SSR, which is very useful for them when funds are idle. And I think that use case is one that's worth reflecting on just because of the potential growth opportunity it has. If you think about as the stablecoin market continues to scale, the opportunity to allocate any idle funds for whatever the period of time to earn and we sort of see this started with small amounts for a short duration, but that's steadily been growing. And I think this is a use case that could be very interesting for the ecosystem. So that's it. Very short and sweet, and hopefully to the point. But with that, I'll hand back to Rune.
Awesome. Thanks for you. Yeah, this is so for I think maybe a year or maybe half a year, there were these types of reports were circulated internally in the various ecosystem teams in Sky, and I was always like, oh my god, this is so important knowledge to be up to date to and kind of like following. This is like the critical kind of financial and sort of product performance data that matters the most for the whole ecosystem. So I think it's really cool. Like, I mean, I we'll probably just keep doing this every single week, and I don't know, we should find ways to make it even more real time, just because obviously what we all want to see is at some point the stars start to go live and different stars like develop different strategies to acquire users, and then all of these graphs, they just start going vertical, and it should be possible to really like follow that and like understand what's working, right? What are the things that have an impact? I mean, it's not like I feel like we have it's not that easy to really figure that out currently, but the more we look into it and the more there's like broad awareness and broad access to this data and visualization of this data, um, um, the sooner as a community and as like a governance process, Sky will develop kind of the instinct for for what's working and what's not working. Yeah, so that's really cool. I'm looking forward to the update next week to see how things are going from there, and hopefully we're on the path to 10 billion and beyond. And if not next week, then it'll come once we start launching the stars. So with that, I will go into talking about launch stars and like the kind of the stuff that's like both. Yeah. So first I will talk about like practically what's happening like right now with the stars that are being created, to give people a sense of like all the work that's going on behind the scenes to prepare for I mean the Spark launch obviously, but there's also a whole bunch of other stars coming. Okay. There we go. Actually, this was meant to be an elaborate forum post that like went into detail in this stuff, and then I would kind of spell it out in this call. But I've just been like in nonstop meetings with all the people developing all of the kind of crazy technology that's coming together and that will start to materialize. Also around the time, I mean, it's really all coming together around that when the stars are really starting to ramp up and going live. That's when a lot of the AI and scalable coordination, scalable operations tech that has been worked on for like literally 4 years, it's all going to start coming together. So it's a really exciting time right now. And I feel like increasingly you can feel it from everybody that's working on this stuff, that you can feel the buzz, can feel the AGI, even though that's still a little weird. That's a little while out, but it's like we're actually going that direction. We're seeing the path there. Anyway, so the core building block of all of this and like tapping into all the tech and tapping into all the network effect and all of the opportunity of Sky is ultimately the star agents, right? And we renamed them from sub-DAOs to agents when the concept was slightly reworked to open up for external capital and open up for eventually facilitating permissionless creation of these things, which is really just like a different level of scalability potential. So it's just gonna mean that the level of network effects, the level of flywheel, and economies of scale is going to just be completely unrestricted. If we can kind of get the flywheel off the ground, right? We can get the network effect really growing and trending towards growth. And so that's kind of the key challenge right now is like, okay, so there's this long-term framework, the Sky Agent framework, right? That has Sky primitives, which is the toolkit that stars tap into to do all the cool stuff they're doing, such as Spark, deploying with the Spark liquidity layer into, the BlackRock BUIDL with the tokenization Grand Prix, and Athena and Maple and all this stuff that's happening right now, and kind of like developing in real time. Like I feel like while we're doing this community call, Spark will be deploying like another 50 million into some new protocol. Who knows? It's pretty much happening. We're doing it live pretty much at this point, and that's still just like the very beginning, right? Because we're just at the very early stage of like testing out what's possible with the Sky primitives, and it's not even being, um, it's not even we're not even unleashing the real autonomy of the star agents yet. But that's the direction we're going, um, and so to get there, basically, we are like the launch project effectively, and the teams in the ecosystem that are all getting Sky off the ground and getting Sky towards the holy grail of zero fixed core expenses and just making the whole thing run along without needing more major governance changes or major new initiatives, which is coming end of this year. And the really like like I said, the core building block that is getting the stars bootstrapped, getting it off the ground, and that involves creating the Genesis stars. So the Genesis stars are basically the stars are like Spark, right? The ones that are like they're sort of heavily curated and handheld, right? And they're like spun off out of Sky in many cases, and there's like heavy support and like interaction with all of the various contributor teams working on different things in Sky. And so for most of them, there's some exceptions to this, but for most of them, it works kind of like this diagram here, right? So I'll go through it like bit by bit. Wait, let me zoom in. So it's actually what if I do this? Yeah, okay. So, and this is like, this is conceptual in terms of how it interacts with governance and the Atlas and so on, because the Atlas is still, that's basically all the tech that's coming, right? The stuff that really makes the Atlas practically functional as a technology rather than more of like a governance construct, which is what it still is mostly at this point. But you basically have a founding team that sort of interacts with the Sky Agent framework, and in practice, there's obviously like heavy handholding and collaboration with launch project. But this then enables the creation of a star agent, which means it means a bunch of different things. But the most important thing is that this means the creation of a token, right? So stars always have tokens, and the founder then gets some of the tokens. Then, in order to kind of scale up the Genesis star, so there's some exceptions to this, Spark being one of them, but for the most part, basically every single star that's coming, even the Genesis stars, they have some external capital, and that turned out to be just crucial in scaling up, even in the very short run, because if you have external capital involved in a star, and especially in the Genesis stars, that means that there's some smart money underwriting the abilities of the founder, and also that it will have skin in the game to kind of like follow up on the founder's performance, right? So it requires much less like involvement by launch project and by Sky token holders and so on, right? But rather that there's going to be like a somebody with skin in the game that basically put their own money in, right? So they did a capital injection into the Star agent and then get tokens out of it. And then what Sky's doing to like get this to support this in most cases, and I guess the one exception to this is Polaris, right, which is like a very interesting exception where that's entirely driven by the external capital only. But in most other cases, there is like a contribution match by Sky that then also injects capital into the Star agent, and then that results in tokens also going to Sky stakeholders, right? So USDS farmers, where the USDS holders get the tokens, but then Sky gets the SSR, like gets the return on the stable coins being used to farm with, which then essentially converts it into cash. That then goes into that ends up benefiting Sky and going into the surplus buffer and through the treasury management function to eventually be used for burn and for staking rewards and voting rewards. And then some of the tokens also go to Sky stakers. And this is, I mean, the first point where this will be the Star token rewards for Sky stakers is going to be unlocked. That's going to be on SBK token launch, right, for the Sky stakers once that system is live, which is coming very soon. It's really right on the horizon, and so is SBK token launch. But then SBK will just be the first of many tokens available to Sky stakers, but basically as a choice, right? So as a Sky staker, you can choose: do you want to get USDS rewards, or do you want to pick one of the various Genesis stars and get rewards in that? And for most of the Genesis stars, it's the majority of the tokens are going to go to USDS farmers, and a smaller amount is going to go to Sky stakers. It's possible that some of them will have a maybe like a 50-50 split between USDS farming and Sky stakers, and that really like depends on the like the sort of the target demographic profile of the community of the star, right? So generally, if you have a more consumer focused star that's more about like driving USDS demand in particular, right, and like sort of driving end user adoption, it makes sense to get it spread more broadly to as many people as possible, and that's where stablecoins are really good for that. And if it's more like if it's more like, I don't know what to call it, like nerdy and boring, or like governance heavy, or more like in the weeds, then it can also make sense to give a larger share to Sky stakers, because at that point it's less about getting the broad distribution and liquidity for the token, and it's more about like actually you want knowledgeable governance participants and people that are just able to like actually appreciate the token if it's a bit more advanced. And yeah, and like I said, oh yeah, yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, just to let you know, because I think Juan's dropped off, but there's a lot of people requesting for you to stop and restart your streaming, because I think a lot of people are having trouble seeing that.
Okay, let me try again. Yeah, so okay, leave the call, close the app, and open again. Wait, okay, so is it working? Okay, great. Yeah, feel free to interrupt me if there's some issue again. Yeah, but actually, I mean, I feel like I went through kind of the basics of. Okay, not yet. Okay. Well, the other thing I can do is I can like make. How do I even do that? I can. Okay, no, I can't figure that out. But I could try to make like an Excalibur canvas and let people join that. But that's gonna take a little bit more time. Okay, look, I'll just share. Oh, don't reveal the alpha. Yeah, okay, I can do. Right, okay. I'll make a screenshot. That's a good idea. I actually only have two like slides, So like two things. Oh, that was not supposed to happen. Okay, I'm just pasting here just in case. Cool. Technical difficulties, troubleshooting live on stream. That's how we like to do it. Okay, but so yeah. So what I wanted to say is that this process I just described here, right? It's like a very at this stage, it's well, first of all, it's probably one of the well, it's probably just straight up like the most complicated thing anybody is doing in, in crypto and blockchain anywhere because it's not just like a gigantic technical challenge to get all these pieces together. There's like probably an even bigger like legal challenge and operational challenge and cultural challenge because we are onboarding like a lot of like very high quality founders are coming in they're brand new. They've never been like something like Spark, right? That's like an OG team that has worked in Maker for, I mean, I don't even know how many years, but like way too many years considering this is crypto, right? There's like some real OGs. But a lot of the other stars, because of like basically the successful um, proof of concept of Spark and its success, attract a lot of high quality founders that are not Maker or Sky OGs. So they've had to be like onboarded into this, and while messing around with all these like brand new tech and processes and it really like especially at this stage when we're still like pre AI to in many of the things that are being done. It is very process heavy, right? Because the thing about the stars is they get to play around with the secret sauce, right? They get to like touch the scale and the collateral and that kind of stuff of Sky. And even just like even if we're not talking about having new teams coming in and deploying USDS collateral and making, which obviously is like the most delicate, most I don't know what to call it. Like it's the biggest like balancing act, right? Where you want to open up for flexibility, but you also want to really make sure you're risk managing on so many different dimensions. But even just like uh, giving people some like custody of the brand in a sense, right? And like having that association, even that takes a lot of management, a lot of work. So what my point is that what I'm saying is like right now this process is very to kind of minimize the risk and to maximize the likelihood of like having good first impression and building that momentum and doing things step by step. So we're like building towards just like a steady, strong launch of all of the stuff that's coming. It's very like handholdy, as I was saying in the beginning, right? It's a very manual process, and there's still a lot of like um, sort of top-down governance and sort of yeah involvement with the core teams and sort of cross-pollination and cross-coordination, all that kind of stuff, right? And the goal is really to get like the first cohort of the Genesis stars out and then begin like and then it's looking like it will be something like between like 6 and 10 potentially. And then when like a really good like a good amount of those have launched and have gotten off the ground and are just executing and generating revenue, generating profits, launching the tokens, all of this stuff, then the next phase will be to prepare for the completely permissionless um, star creation process. Right. And okay, so I actually don't have a well, maybe I have somewhere. Just quickly scroll through all my secret. Okay, yeah, I have it here actually. So this is the like the simplified view of the. Oh, and let me paste it in as well. I mean, I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm underestimating people's intelligence here, perhaps, but um, like I mean, as you can see, it's the same thing, just with a slightly less arrows, right? Where you don't have the Genesis capital from Sky, and you don't have the tokens going to Sky stakeholders. And instead, you just have the very basic situation where you have a founder and you have some capital, and they interact with the system and distribute the token amongst themselves, and then they're ready to go. Like they're ready to hit the ground running and start to tap into the Sky primitives. And yeah, getting to this point again, this is like truly, the strongest possible pillar and foundation for exponential growth, right? And I'm not just talking about like old school Silicon Valley VC exponential growth. I'm talking about post AGI, singularity level exponential. So yeah, that's the holy grail, right? That's what we're going to get to. But the thing is, it's going to be so easy to like trip and fall before we get to this point. So that's why the Genesis stars, they still have to be done very that's just like it has to be done, and it needs to take the time it takes, and it needs to be done so handholdy and with some levels of like bureaucracy and like experimentation in order to really just make sure that the safety is there, the security is there to let this scale to the next level, because in this case, it very much is slow is fast, right? That rather than, it's not like, what actually is the most important is not the innovation pipeline or the tooling or any of that. Like it really is the security of this, because if the security is completely on point, then it can be replicated infinitely, right? You could launch, I don't know, 10 million tokens, right? You can launch 10 million stars, and you would have 10 million, autonomous, independent, like self improving agents basically running around and tapping into Sky primitives and growing the shared network effect. But if, let's say, the 10th star or the 5th star blows something up and has, becomes insolvent or something, or there's some PR scandal or anything like that, right? There's a legal issue. Anything like that happens on the road to really scaling up, and the whole thing could be set back several years, right? So this is a very exciting and pivotal moment for the whole ecosystem. Yeah. Okay. That's that's some Rune radio for you guys. Oh, did it work? Yeah. Okay. I'll turn off the stream, and we can do some Q&A, and I'll just answer questions and so on. And then if there's time for it, we can get into just like, we can kind of go back into this topic about like the kind of the theoretical, how to set up a star and so on, how that's all going to work out. Okay, in these cases,
there's a question
why
from
does
Anon Builder. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll read them. Because I'll just first I'll answer this the one above. So in these cases, why does the project choose to register as a star agent? So there's two cases to talk about here, right? The first one is the general case, and there the answer is basically, well, the answer is the Sky primitives. I mean, that's the Sky primitives is the thing that sets a star apart from like any other like launchpad or like a DAO toolkit that you could use to launch a tokenized agent or DAO or basically like DeFi token. And what the Sky primitives are is that basically like superpowers or unique features that lets stars tap into the economies of scale and network effects of Sky, including economic network effects and economic scale, and also data and AI scale and governance scale and sort of network effects and ecosystems. So then the question is, okay, so you get a bunch of upside. Then the question is, what's the cost, right? And the cost is, so for like in the long run, the cost is basically this thing called the agent upkeep, which is just, it's designed to be like a very low yearly fee, basically like upkeep that the stars have to pay the Sky in order to basically, in order for like the kind of the business and the economics to make sense, so that Sky can maintain the security of all of this and make the Sky primitives available. So the question is like, are the Sky primitives, do they provide more of an upside than the cost of the agent upkeep? And yeah, the agent upkeep is, it's very low. So the goal is to make, I mean, first of all, the cost very low, so it's very much about scale rather than nickel and diming the individual builder. And then of course having the Sky primitives being as valuable as possible. And one of the ways that the Sky primitives are very valuable, actually we'll get into that with the accessibility reward, but basically that that also, like, Sky shares the vast majority of its economy, like of the upside from its economies of scale with the stars, and has this like permanent commitment to that, so it can't kind of like rug pull the stars in terms of their access to different to, like, yeah, basically to the kind of the value that they're taking part in creating. And then for the short term, for the Genesis stars, it's quite different, because everything I just said, that's like completely theoretical and sort of like abstract, right? And you wouldn't be able to go out and convince a builder, be like, oh, here's all this like blah, 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 economies of scale and so on, right? Like they'll be like, well, okay, what's the concrete? Like, what's the, until you can show me this stuff in action and you can prove me that this actually makes sense, then that sounds like, getting into like a really risky venture, right? And taking a bunch of like early risk and messing around with stuff that's still being developed. So for the what we call the Genesis stars, it's really that I mean, there's a huge like first of all, there's really just like a huge awareness and like branding upside, right? That the stars are like a known concept, and there's a lot of audience out there that's waiting for these, and that's attention is just one of the main things that everybody in crypto is cares about, right? But then there's also the fact that in the early stage, as we are building out the Genesis stars, all these like gaps, these like massive gaps exist in, okay, here's a like obvious low-hanging fruit that you could do with Sky if you had the time. And now with the stars, it's like, well, now you can sort of get the time because you can monetize it, so you can actually raise capital and then like hire people to do the work, right? So there's all these like, yeah, like just like open like business models that are open for grabs, and the launch project is then methodically sort of lining up, making sure that the high quality founders that are coming in, they're kind of being, they're being it's like coming together like a puzzle, right? So they can build upon the values of each other and kind of complement and like, instead of you don't want a bunch of Genesis stars all like competing for the same particular product, right? Instead, you'd want them to be like, one is focusing on DeFi, one is focused on RWA, another one is focused on like gaming, another one focused on adoption and so on, right? And that's all being sort of orchestrated right now out of the launch project, right? Because there's just so much opportunity for everyone. Like really, there's so much upside to go around. And then because that upside is so obvious, then it's also very low risk and just like obviously a good idea for Sky to then also itself capitalize these Genesis stars, right? So that was like the first thing I was showing, right? That you also have Sky directly capitalizing these Genesis stars, which then turns into tokens that goes to USDS farmers, which turns it into just like USDS income for Sky, and tokens that goes to Sky holders, right? So the Sky stakers get to hold a lot of these initial really attractive and sort of low, like, yeah, Genesis stars that are tapping into the low-hanging fruit and capturing like the obvious business models where there's good profits to be made. So yeah, okay, I hope that answers the question. But this is like literally the top question of the whole, like, I mean, this is the key thing that's gonna make all of this make sense, hopefully, is that there will be a lot of builders that will choose to build stars and launch their idea through the Sky agent framework rather than through some other method, right? And in particular, I guess Sky is like specializing in niche of people that are not trying to pump a meme coin or pump an L1 or something and do something that's about getting some quick money, right? But rather, Sky is just laser focused on the people that are in it for the long run, that are all about delivering revenue, building up a user base. It's not about pumping and dumping a token. It's about steady value, just like building it step by step, right? By having good unit economics and having profits and all this stuff, right? So that's I mean, hilariously enough, that's like a completely vacant niche in crypto, right? Like pretty much nobody is doing that. So like that's complete. I mean, I wouldn't say completely off for grabs, right? But that's like very much like a big opportunity that Sky is meeting. And what we're seeing, what I think all the data points towards that there is just a huge appetite by founders to take part in this, and much bigger than I expected. So I expected that getting the Genesis Star founders, that would be that would be like a huge hurdle and like a huge challenge that would, like at first it would be sort of like you have to get over this hurdle, and then finally you can get some momentum and get some high quality founders. But the opposite kind of happened, that just immediately there's like way too many founders, and it's like, it becomes a matter of like, okay, supporting all these new founders and making sure that we don't like overcommit to trying to onboard too many all at once and then can't properly scale up the support functions and so on. Yeah, so that's really exciting, and I'm very happy that I mean, that was the key thing for me, is like, are we gonna be able to convince founders that are not maker OGs and have them actually understand all this crazy stuff and stake their career on it? And yeah, turns out that there, at least for now, there at least are like a very very solid a cohort of high quality people interested in that. All right, for a Pioneer Star, do you really need a founder? Can it just be the foundation or the dev team building the chain? The answer is yes. So and this is actually happening in many cases. So yes, that's completely the case. But I mean, the like in that case, it's just the foundation / dev team that acts as the founder. And yeah, I could go into some details that's related to like legal and profit modes and that kind of stuff. But yeah, but the short answer is that pretty much it's like, in fact, the answer can be even short. Like it can even be like, you don't even need a founder. You don't even need a foundation or a dev team. You could do it. I mean, and now I'm talking long run, right? You could do it with just like an AI, like a bunch of autonomous agents, right? That just like I mean, and now I'm talking about like the kind of the Web2 agents, right? That run with some LLMs and some code, and then they can literally set it all up and do it. And you don't need a foundation, you don't need a legal structure, you don't need anything. Like the reason why in practice those end up being really important in the case of all the Genesis stars, and like, I mean, all of the kind of the builders that are looking at this seriously, it's just because it's still like, it's a big leap still, right? So I think later on it will be clear that stars are a lot easier to create, and they're like, you can almost like hit and run a star. Like you can sort of like set it up, wire it up, hook it up, have it generate, like get it into like a flow of generating profits, and then you can actually just leave it and keep it running, and it will actually run by itself, in a way that people have wanted to achieve this stuff with DAOs for like, I mean, especially in Maker, right? That's something we wanted for like freaking more than 10 years. And it's here, like the moment has arrived. We have the technology, we have the infrastructure, we have the kind of the, the supporting, the support systems that allows this to happen, risk managed, I guess you can say, right? So you can really do it. It can be done scalably. You could have, I mean, like I said, you could have 10 million stars, and 9 million of those could be like fully like humanless automatons that are just generating profits to do buybacks for the token holders and following predetermined algorithms, and occasionally, asking ChatGPT or Claude for like, ideas for how they can self-improve, and verification for whether they're seeing they're seeing their metrics trending in the right direction based on the last stuff they autonomously tried. All right, next question. For projects that are further along, have some product market fit, distribution, maybe even have already launched the token, how can these become parts of the Sky ecosystem? Can these be a star at some point? Yeah, so this is something we're running into this all the time. And so the answer is that it's very difficult, and I think it will be a lot easier in a couple of years when stars are really proven. But at this early stage, it's basically it's not like it's technically possible, but it's like sort of, I guess, culturally or like practically it's extremely hard. And the reason is that one of the key a key characteristic of a star is that it doesn't have technical sovereignty, right? So like the star token holders, they don't actually physically control the infrastructure of the star. They only control the state of the star artifact. And then the entire Sky governance security process is then like locked into this like Atlas alignment, you know, a loop basically, right? That then modifies the on-chain state of all of the physical infrastructure based on what the artifacts are basically telling it to do, right? But the critical check is that if the artifacts are like maliciously or erroneously edited in some way that is misaligned with the Atlas, and an example of this could be, you know, like if the founding team tries to like rug pull. I mean, you know, I mean, basically any of the horror stories that comes out of like almost every DAO out there, right? Any of those things will not be possible with a star because there's this secondary check where, well, actually, there's many levels of secondary checks and balances that basically make it effectively impossible, and ultimately, like Sky holders have sort of the ultimate responsibility to keep the you know, the physical infrastructure of the stars aligned with the star artifact and the spirit of the Atlas. And then the reason why this is a complete like I mean, this is a huge roadblock for existing projects to then become stars is that means they have to like hand over what we call physical sovereignty. And it's like this is not a problem if somebody's come brand new and they're kind of like starting up a star with that expectation right off the bat. This is not really a problem at all because it's not really any different from holding USDS, right? And there's like plenty of DAOs are holding USDS right now, right? And hold their treasuries in SUSDS and so on. So that's really not, I mean, if you hold your entire treasury in SUSDS, you are, you know, basically handing over a lot of your physical sovereignty basically to the governance security processes of Sky, right? But but it's just it's like it's a very it's just like a very hard thing to understand if you have something that's already there, like handing over your governance control. That's like really like basically when like, and there's been so many projects that's come to me and like talk to me about exactly this thing, right? And basically just told them, yeah, like I think in practice this is not really, it would be just be so hard. Like it's not just getting the founders to kind of understand that this is how it works, and you can't do it differently, right? Because if you do it differently, then the problem is now suddenly, right? If we call it a star, but it doesn't act like a star, like for instance, it's still capable of rug pulling, then you know that's going to cause problems for the whole ecosystem, right? So, but one thing is getting the founders to like realize that, but it seems like it would be almost impossible to get an actual existing community of token holders and DAO contributors to like understand that, right? And to go on board with that. That seems very difficult. And it will only be possible in the future if the stars just end up becoming highly successful and you have that like proof that, okay, even though Sky has the physical sovereignty, you know, they're not like stealing the money, just like they're not stealing the collateral in USDS, right? Okay. All right. So are stars also, next question, are the stars also going to have lower borrowing rate for the allocation system in comparison to borrowing through Spark, for example? Yeah. Okay. So this is I mean, I could literally ramble about this for like half an hour probably, but this is the Sky primitive called, the allocation system we're talking about here, right? And Sparklend, for instance, that's an example of a lending protocol. It's like a DeFi app, right? That's powered by the allocation system, which is a Sky primitive. It's like one of the primary, like there are really two of the most important Sky primitives. The first is the allocation system, and the second is the accessibility reward. And the allocation system, that's the thing that handles like the entirety of the supply side. And the basic concept of the allocation system is that a star borrows at what's called the base rate, and then they can lend out elsewhere at a spread. So they borrow at the lowest possible rate, which is the base rate, from Sky, and then they deploy that into something elsewhere. And then when they deploy into some other asset, they are always taking on some additional risk. And that's the this is where all like the magic of stars is happening, right? Because that's why this system is so incredibly scalable, because the star is the one getting the upside, like this sort of additional upside of like finding a really good opportunity to deploy the USDS collateral into. But also take the risk, right? So from Sky's perspective, it's like, okay, yeah, of course it's a great idea. Like you can get, like if you can go out and find tons of upside, that's great. You can get to keep all of that. But you also then have to take all of the risk, right? And then you get into like this really complicated stuff around like credit enhancement and risk framework. And yeah, there's a lot of exciting stuff coming about this in a couple of weeks. And it's actually really cool. Like, so the risk framework was such a major, like another of the really big uncertainties and blockers for a very long time, with the whole Sky project and Sky transformation. But actually, it's I mean, all the hard issues have been solved at this point, and now it's just a matter of like polishing it, and then it can be published. And I think that's gonna like really open up a whole new dimension of, suddenly you will have all these capital allocators and like risk nerds looking at it and realizing like, okay, damn, there's actually a big opportunity here, right? Like it's really cool to be able to open up what essentially has been like the monopoly of central banks for well, I don't know, I guess only 100 years. I guess they're not that old, but like really the stuff that's like, built modern society in the last 100 years is fractional reserve banking, right? And what Sky offers through the allocation system is like just a major improvement that kind of fixes all of the fixes the issues with it. Way more transparency, way more capital efficiency, but has that like sort of that fundamental mix of, you have massive economies of scale, but you also have huge amounts of autonomy and flexibility. Okay, let me see if I'll there's this last question about Gnosis, and then I'll just quickly go into accessibility reward. So well, the answer is that there's a lot of back and forth with Gnosis, and actually the issue with Gnosis is exactly this thing around like what exactly. Oh, and I guess I just rambled so long about it already, but I guess the thing I should mention is that, so when you have existing projects that want to be stars, but you can't really, it's like it's hard to make an existing project a star. The reality is the best solution is likely going to be create a star that is like not exactly that project, but is like slightly separate and has, I mean, it could be the same founding team as the project itself, right? But the token distribution will have to be like a little bit different, because a star token has to be publicly circulating. And right now, this is not completely finalized, but likely the requirement is minimum 10% circulating supply for a star. So you can't have like a privately held star that has no circulating supply at all. And circulating supply means like fully permissionless liquidity, right? That's like on dexes and so on. And the reason why that is a hard requirement is because that just like adds a whole new layer of like predictable governance when you have this like circulating supply, right? Then you have like basically traders and free market, open market participants that has some skin in the game, and that means there's a much greater chance you're going to catch issues, and that makes everything so much safer for Sky. Yeah, and yeah, there's this conversation about like how to go with the allocation system. Yeah, and it's a very advanced stage, the allocation system. And now the work for the allocation system is not like the allocation system itself, the risk framework itself is like basically like all the hard problems are completely done at this point, and it's ready to scale. It is already scaling to some extent if you look at what Spark is doing, and that will go much further soon. But now the like the next step for allocation system is then supercharging it with AI, and which first of all means like much more opportunity and profit to large established allocators like Spark, but it also means completely like blowing open the door and opening up, removing all barriers of entry to new participants, right? Because you just get these like AI agents out of the box that can set up a complete best in class allocation strategy that runs in real time and self improves in real time, and anybody will be able to tap into that very easily. Okay, now very quick. I'll just very quickly talk about, where is it? Yeah, here we go. Accessibility reward. Through all these boxes in 4 minutes, but so accessibility reward is like it's a Sky primitive, right? So this is like a feature that the star sort of like taps into and has available, and then when it kind of lives in the star's artifact, right, which is the star's own like mini atlas that the token holders have this like root control over, and then they delegate out day-to-day management of the accessibility reward system to GovOps. Yeah, okay, I could also, that's a whole tangent, but yeah, basically to go, so there are basically like sort of like there's like there's an ecosystem of like real-time actors on the ground actually managing the accessibility reward system according to like the strategy that the star token holders define through their artifact. And then the kind of basic business model that you can do with this Sky primitive is, so first of all, you can have a native savings app, right? That's the really straightforward business. And so this is what Spark is doing with Spark.fi, right? And this is like a decent part of their business model and their profit potential, right? And when you have a star that uses accessibility reward to power its native savings app, then what happens is the star gets both what's called the integrator portion and the star portion of the accessibility reward, which is 20 basis points. And so yeah, so basically, I mean, accessibility reward is split up into two. It's like a referral bonus, but it's split up into two like tiers or two portions. One portion is the star portion. That's the portion that always goes to the star. So only stars can get this portion, and they get it by sort of virtue of being the ones that invoke and manage the accessibility reward system, and then being the ones that distribute out the code. So it's basically like it's a bunch of codes that you hand out. So like you put the code into your native savings app, and then all your users gets tagged, and then you get the code specifies the integrator and it specifies the star. And in the case of the native savings app, that's the same. That will just be the star itself. But then the other interesting avenue for growth and profit potential is to go out and do business development with, institutions, external like front ends, apps, wallets, anything where you can offer SUSDS or USDS as some kind of even as a decentralized product that users use fully decentralized, because you can just still, even if they're using it in a fully decentralized way, you can still tag them without having custody over their assets. And when an integrator tags some USDS, through their external savings app, right? So they could have two different, it could be, let's say, one is an exchange and another is a wallet. Then what happens is the tag identifies the star that is managing the code, and then the star gets 10 basis points. So in this example, right, of the external savings app number one, let's say it's an exchange. So then the exchange has, whatever it has. Let's say the exchange has like 100 million USDS or 100 million SUSDS. Then they're all tagged, and a tag to the star and the tag to the owner of the exchange. And then the star gets, out of the 100 million, gets 100,000 per year, and then the exchange gets 100,000 per year.
Sorry,
And the
Rune,
user gets
could you paste your screen again, please? A lot of requests.
Sorry.
I think a lot of people are struggling to see the stream.
Yeah, should have preempted that. Yeah, I think I got it all. And yeah, you can do that for multiple integrators, right? So you could have a star that all it's doing is like business development. It doesn't even have a front end. It doesn't even have active allocation system. It doesn't have anything. It doesn't even have a team. It just have token holders, and those token holders are, like it's like a cult, right? And like true believers, and they're just spending all their time just holding their tokens and then going out and telling like any app, savings app, fintech company, anything they can find, and be like, look, you can you can integrate SUSDS. It has the best possible risk-adjusted return, and then on top of that, we can give you 10 basis points on top of that return, right? And that's really the key thing here, that like the accessibility reward is on top of the Sky savings rate, right? So the end user, isn't impacted, right? Like by whether there is a accessibility reward or not. So basically, yeah, the star can get the 10 basis points and the integrator can get the 10 basis points, and everybody benefits. And this is like in the long run, this will be like permissionless to set up, right? So you can permissionless, you can set up the star, then you can set up the accessibility reward primitive, then you can generate the codes, and then you can go out and start handing out the codes, and then just start getting the income. And actually, to do this, like, you don't have to take any risk. You don't have to build anything. You really just, it's just like purely monetizing relationships. And what's really cool also about this is that there's like a built-in like moat, or like built-in um like revenue stability, because these numbers are like fixed, right? So there can't be like there's not going to be a race to the bottom where another star comes and says, well, this guy's only giving you 10 basis points, but we're going to give you the whole 20 basis points, or something like that, right? Because Sky actually regulates that. So basically, it's not allowed. I mean, and there's of course how to regulate that exactly, and have people not circumvent that. That's of course not trivial, but it's possible, right? Especially with AI and clearly defined rules, and like sort of learning and updating over time based on what happens, right? But the intention is clear, right? That the goal is to make it like give star founders, star token holders, star builders, give them like a sense of reliability, right? That like if you build up a business with stars, you can count on the value of that business, benefiting yourself, right? And not getting rug pulled by Sky changing the rules, or other stars like playing dirty or something like that, right? But rather, it's all about like a harmonious, happy ecosystem where where everybody's just like growing the pie, delivering value, and then getting fairly rewarded for the value they deliver, and then automating the shit out of it with AI, right? So it all runs automatically, and you don't have to do anything. You can just sit back and stake your tokens. All right. Yeah, what's the best link on the forum to get more information about this? So I was supposed to have that post done for today, but unfortunately it's not done. So right now I don't really think there's a good link, but I can link you to the ad. I was dealing with exactly this just the other day, and I think over time this will increasingly become the go-to answer to anything like this. I can show you the exact Sky primitive, and then you can read all the nitty-gritty details directly. Let me see, demand side, stablecoin, accessibility reward. Here we go, yeah. I don't know how, actually it would be great, Kianga, if you could give some feedback on like how helpful this is and whether, you know, yeah, basically what information is missing and how it could be made more accessible. Of course, like, I mean, Atlas today is like so early stage, right? So what's coming next for the Atlas is gonna hopefully blow everyone's minds, and kind of like really take things to the next level in terms of accessibility and collaboration and network effects and all that. But even at this stage, it's just good to like get a read on like how people are thinking about like the raw information that's in there right now. Okay, what would be a
Perfect. All
nice
right.
yeah, and then like I want to address the very last point here, right? What would be nice is a pitch that would be easy to share with somewhat busy founders who might be interested in accessibility reward. Yeah, I agree with that, and we kind of have that, but it's like an internal process. Yeah, so basically, that's so in addition to Rajiv doing the demand analysis that he went through, right? He's also deeply involved with the accessibility reward system. That's like the program that's running right now, and that's like there are all sorts of protocols out there using. And so that's is being worked on, and the goal is to like try to scale this up to the next level.
Yeah, there's I've seen a few internal versions, a little bit green, but hopefully we can share them in the next few days slash weeks. But yeah, thanks Codenite for bringing that up because it's definitely useful. And as always, thanks Rajiv for sharing the weather for every week. Really appreciate it, and thanks everyone for bringing in all your questions, and Rune as always for explaining this. We'll see what we do next week. Obviously, Discord is not working very well in terms of sharing screen. Luckily, we only had 3 screenshots, but it'd be great to have something a little bit more reliable. So we'll see what we can do if we go back to Zoom or if we try something else. And yeah, if you have any questions or any feedback or any topic we should touch because it's needed, please send us feedback. We're really looking forward to it. Or you can also write in forum.sky.money. Thank you very much, everyone.